For generations, the Battle of Gettysburg has been wrapped in a shroud of myth and martyrdom, remembered for the courage of Pickett's charge and the cryptic phrase of the high water mark of the Confederacy. But what if the true story of the South's defeat has been hiding in plain sight, buried within the formal, dry prose of Robert E. Lee's own official report? This is not a story of doomed heroism, but of a series of calculated risks, critical delays, and catastrophic command failures that Lee himself could never afford to fully admit. In this video, we go beyond the smoke and glory to dissect Lee's fatal gamble. We'll expose how the initial success on July 1st was squandered by a moment of deadly hesitation, how a brilliant plan for July 2nd unraveled due to stubbornness and poor coordination, and how the infamous charge on July 3rd was doomed long before the first soldiers stepped out from the trees. We're analyzing the official record to uncover the shocking omissions, the untold story of how the Army of Northern Virginia was not just defeated on the battlefield, but was outmaneuvered by its own leadership. If you appreciate our historical content, we'd be grateful for your support. Please like and subscribe to help us continue sharing these stories. On the 20th of January, 1864, from his field headquarters, Lee at last submitted his formal report to General Cooper in Richmond. With an official's detachment, he presented his narrative of the Army's campaigns in Maryland and Pennsylvania, appending the subordinate commanders' accounts as they were delivered. He observed the unavoidable lateness in receiving casualty figures and the partial nature of the medical director's account, explaining that precise totals could only be authenticated via the formal documentation from each unit commander. He provided charts outlining the Army's progress, but added that the comprehensive map of the Gettysburg battlefield would be supplied subsequently, an understated indication of the event's intricacy and delicacy. Lee's record commences with the Army's progression into Pennsylvania. The Corps of Hill advanced in the direction of Cashtown on June 29th, with Longstreet's command following. Ewell's Corps received instructions to return to the main body from its position at Carlisle. The primary aim was not to bring about a full-scale battle, and the Army was ignorant of the Union's swift approach. On June 30th, General Pettigrew, dispatched by General Heth to procure provisions in Gettysburg, found the community already held by Federal horsemen. Pettigrew prudently pulled back without initiating a fight, conveying his observations. At daybreak on July 1st, Hill advanced to ascertain the enemy's numbers, convinced they comprised merely a cavalry outpost. Heth's division encountered Union scouts and drove them backward until confronting firm opposition from a concealed infantry body. 2 brigades from Heth, significantly outmatched, were compelled into a withdrawal under fire, during which Brigadier General Archer was taken prisoner. As General Pender's division came up to reinforce them, Hill commanded a full-scale offensive. The combat escalated violently. Heth's troops, now with support, forced the adversary back through the settlement. The oppressive coming of Ewell's Corps that afternoon shifted the momentum as a unified attack shattered the Union formations, causing them to fall back in disarray through Gettysburg streets with substantial casualties, among them the killing of Union General Reynolds. Many thousands of captives were secured, but the Union forces did not scatter, instead consolidating upon a powerful defensive locale on the elevated terrain south of the town, Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill. Lee was then confronted with a pivotal choice, his command successful, yet disordered from the fierce combat. He promptly directed Ewell to try to seize the crucial high ground, if feasible, a term that would grow notorious for the latitude it provided. Well, inherently prudent and still expecting his complete division to assemble, assessed the reinforced Federal defenses and judged a direct attack to be overly hazardous without additional troops. This instant of indecision proved lethal to the Confederate drive. By the time night fully descended, Union engineers had converted the hills into a strengthened fortress, and the prime chance to destroy the Army of the Potomac on that first day was permanently gone. Lee then assessed a dangerous predicament. A retreat through the mountain gaps with his large supply wagons would be highly susceptible to enemy strikes. However, staying motionless in location presented its own dangers, since the local region could not sustain the Army indefinitely and the foe controlled the strategic advantage. Bolstered by the initial victory and trusting in the greater combat resolve of his soldiers, Lee chose the bold course of assaulting the reinforced Union lines on July 2nd. His scheme was intricate and depended on flawless timing across a broad front. The 1st Corps of Longstreet was to execute the primary thrust against the Union left side, intending to dismantle the enemy line from south to north. At the same time, Ewell's 2nd Corps was to execute a vigorous diversionary action against the Union right at Culp's Hill, fixing those units in place and stopping them from aiding the left flank. The 3rd Corps of Hill would apply continual pressure on the Union center, generating a multi-sided emergency that would overpower General Meade's capacity to react. The implementation of this strategy started to unravel immediately. Longstreet, dissatisfied with the plan, postponed his movement for many hours, advocating for an alternate tactical method and waiting for his last brigade to appear. This postponement afforded the Union command critical hours to reinforce their left flank, especially on a rugged, forested rise known as Little Round Top, which had been almost entirely unguarded. When Longstreet's offensive finally began in the early evening, it was brutal and costly. Hood's division on the extreme right became locked in a fierce contest for Devil's Den and the approaches to Little Round Top. The division of McLaws thrust ahead through the peach orchard and the wheat field, generating a chaotic, furious struggle that consumed brigades from both armies. Wright's brigade from Anderson's division even achieved a temporary penetration of the Union center on Cemetery Ridge. A brief vision of what could have been accomplished with more precise coordination. On the left, Ewell's supporting action commenced too late to yield full results. The division of General Johnson became involved in a drawn-out and expensive battle for the earthworks on Culp's Hill, yet preliminary supporting assaults were not forceful enough. The day's conflict was marked by remarkable Confederate courage and isolated penetrations, but a crucial failure in coordination meant these gains were contained. The Union Army, exploiting its interior position, adeptly moved its reinforcements from calm areas to every threatened point, countering each Confederate push. The day ended on a landscape covered with the fallen and without any decisive gain. Regardless of the failures, Lee construed the limited gains on the right as proof that the Union center had been compromised. He determined to intensify his gamble on July 3rd with a still more daring scheme, an enormous focused infantry charge aimed squarely at the middle of the Union line on Cemetery Ridge. Longstreet, now supplemented with Pickett's new division, which had reached the field the previous night, would lead the assault. The strategy required an extraordinary preliminary cannonade from more than 150 artillery pieces to suppress the Union cannon and weaken the infantry defenses. Around 1 in the afternoon, the Confederate artillery barrage started, among the most substantial concentrations of gunfire yet witnessed on the continent. Yet its impact was muted. A great number of Confederate projectiles flew over the ridge's top, detuning without effect in the rear zones.